Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something I find absolutely fascinating. We are unpacking the psychology behind why some men just completely refuse to engage in the traditional and, let's be honest, often exhausting chase when it comes to dating. If you've ever wondered why certain guys seem totally immune to the frantic, sometimes crazy pace of modern courtship, well, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to break down the psychological pillars of this mindset, and we're putting a special focus on the profound power of pacing. We'll look at why wise men intentionally choose to observe carefully before committing. So, have you ever actually noticed that some guys just never chase? Like, at all. They don't constantly text you, they don't beg for attention, and they absolutely don't try to force you to like them. In a dating culture that, kind of normalizes aggressively pursuing someone until they finally just give in, these men are doing the exact opposite, and that prompts a really important question for us. Why do they intentionally step back? Is it arrogance, or is it just a lack of interest? Culturally, we're almost wired to mistake this pause for apathy. I mean, we think, well, if he isn't sprinting after me, he must not care, right? But stepping back from the chase, it isn't a lack of interest at all. It's a massive psychological paradigm shift. It's kind of like the difference between a high-stakes gambler and a patient, long-term investor. The investor isn't apathetic. They're just deeply grounded in a strategy that prioritizes stability and mutual value over a quick, chaotic thrill. Okay, so let's get into the psychology of it. The first psychological pillar driving this pause is a strict prioritization of self-respect over external validation. According to the psychological analysis we're looking at today, some men don't chase because they fundamentally believe that affection should literally never be forced. They hold their own self-respect in a much, much higher regard than the fleeting dopamine hit of winning someone's approval. And this all really stems from a healthy baseline of self-esteem. Think about it, when a person's self-worth is generated internally, they simply don't need a partner to constantly prove their value. They vastly prefer to be naturally appreciated for exactly who they are, rather than spending their time and energy launching this massive campaign to convince someone to choose them. They require mutual interest, plain and simple, rather than participating in a desperate, one-sided pursuit. Because they aren't exhausting themselves with a frantic chase, they actually end up with a massive surplus of energy. So where does all that energy go? It goes straight into personal growth. They're investing their time into their career, their health, their hobbies, and their long-term ambitions. Psychology suggests that focusing on these meaningful, tangible goals creates this deeply grounding sense of purpose that romance alone, frankly, just can't provide. Which leads us to a really crucial distinction. For these men, relationships become a part of their life, not the center of it. Because their confidence comes from their own tangible progress, a romantic connection takes its proper place. It becomes this healthy, wonderful addition to a life that is already incredibly full and satisfying, rather than the sole, overwhelming focus of their entire existence. And that brings us to the absolute core of our explainer today, the power of pacing. See, a man with a full life and healthy self-esteem isn't desperate to fill a void, which gives him the ultimate luxury, and that is time. It is the conscious, deliberate choice to think and observe before ever committing. He's choosing the power of pacing over the intense pressure of rushing. Not everyone expresses interest aggressively. Wise men use the power of pacing to observe a person's true character, their deeply held values, and their baseline behavior over time. They prioritize this deep observation over just acting on immediate physical attraction. They know that initial sparks and adrenaline, that stuff can be completely blinding. So they intentionally slow down the dynamic to see who the other person truly is when that adrenaline finally wears off. It's literally the difference between building a house on a foundation of solid stone versus a foundation of sand. Men who utilize pacing understand that lasting connections require deep, shared values, not just some fleeting impulse. Just like that long-term investor we talked about earlier, they would much rather wait patiently for a secure, highly compatible partnership than gamble blindly and rush into the wrong relationship dynamic. Now, this internal confidence and deliberate pacing naturally extends outward into how they handle interactions with others. It's rooted deeply in reciprocity and mutual effort. They believe that a strong, healthy relationship must, by definition, involve genuine effort from both people involved. It absolutely cannot be a solo project. Notice how incredibly practical this approach is, too. If a man finds he's always the only one reaching out, or if he's constantly swimming in a sea of mixed signals, he doesn't double down and try harder. He views that imbalance as a loud, clear cue to step back. To him, consistency from a partner matters a whole lot more than trying to decode confusing behavior. If the effort isn't mutual, he just respectfully steps away. Of course, stepping back and enforcing these boundaries can be tough, and sometimes it means the connection simply ends. But when taking a step back leads to a romantic dead end, these men possess a highly resilient psychological framework for processing that outcome. It doesn't break them. We're talking about psychological resilience in dating. This means accepting a lack of mutual interest without internalizing it as a flaw in your own self-worth. Resilient people know a fundamental truth. You simply cannot force attraction. So instead of trying to argue with someone or desperately convince them to stay, they accept the reality of the situation and they move forward with their confidence completely intact. Doing this requires a massive, life-changing reframe. It means shifting from viewing rejection as a personal failure to, actually scratch that, it's more like viewing it purely as redirection. By treating a mismatch as a helpful detour towards someone better suited for them, rather than this brutal blow to their ego, they protect their peace. They boldly choose to move forward rather than chasing what clearly isn't meant for them. Ultimately, what we're looking at here is a complete redefinition of what it actually means to express interest and build a relationship. It strips away the crippling anxiety of the modern dating game, right? And it replaces it with grounded, sustainable psychological principles. So, let's bust the biggest myth right here, right now. Not chasing does not mean he doesn't care. It means he prioritizes respect, both for himself and for you. It means he actively maintains a healthy balance in his life, and he is patiently seeking a connection that is completely genuine, reciprocal, and entirely unforced. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to reflect on in your own life. What does genuine connection actually look like to you when you completely remove the artificial, exhausting pressure of the chase? If you relied on the power of pacing and prioritized deep compatibility over fleeting adrenaline, how much healthier could your relationships be? Thanks so much for exploring the psychology of the pause with me today.